actual mouth alcohol defense. There is a simple cross-examination. All that you're really trying to do there is locking him into, he was trained on this, making sure that you've got to have that in evidence, that he was in fact trained on it, that it is a required rule for the administration of the breath test, and then you're just locking him into the times. I understand that you guys have breath test videos a lot. Obviously, you can take advantage of those so well. I mean, anytime that he's turning away, anytime he's in a position where he would not be able to observe a burp or belch, you should be able to hammer that. So use those things. This was the case that I just tried, and this is exactly what I'm talking about here. You want to make sure that whenever you're going to the trial of the case, I mean, I already had the documentation. I already knew. He's got my client arriving at Atlanta pretrial, which is where the trial was, at 3:57, and the first breath test at 4:06. So I knew at that point in time, I'm like, I don't care what he says. I've always got my client for at least 11 minutes of the 20-minute observation period, I've always got my client in the rear of that patrol car. So any juror, most jurors will look at that and say, there's no way you can know if a person burped or belched if you got a plexiglass divider in between there. Again, this is just going through the cross chapter for the observation period, making sure that you're locking the officer there and you've got those materials. And I usually will ask officers this in pretrial hearings so that I don't get any surprises at trial. But go ahead and ask them in a pretrial, at an administrative license suspension hearing, whatever you guys call them here. Just go ahead and ask them. If you ask them one question or two questions there, possible my client could have burped or belched during the 20-minute period preceding the test. And most officers will say, it's possible. And that's all that I need. That's all that I need to hear, is that there was that shimmer of hope out there for me. This is more of just locking them into the rule. This is the way that I would develop the cross-examination if I were here in New York. I would just go through and go, this is the essential elements of the 20-minute waiting period. This is what you have to do, and I tried to adapt that for y'all's actual rule. Do you guys ever have state experts that come in? Sometimes. In Georgia, we see our little guy all the time. He hops around. He's got like a hop sack kind of coat he wears, and he's got his little briefcase, and he's so proud of himself. You can wear him out on this defense. And this is not something that you can literally go to town on him. And we've got great transcripts from him. There's one guy who's just traveling around the state defending these things, and he's a horrible person to cross-examine because he runs from you all the time. But once you actually get him focused and you're getting answers to your questions, you can have a lot of fun with him, particularly on this defense, and I'll show you how. You just want to keep it very, very simple. The slope detector is not perfect because that's what they're there to do. They're there to defend the machine's ability to detect mouth alcohol, because the officer screwed it up. The officer did not wait the 20 minutes that he was required to do it. But hold on, we got this fallback here. We've got the machine slope detector, the mouth alcohol detector on the machine. I'll talk to you more about that. You'll see what the slope actually looks like. But they're there to say that, hold on, even if he messes this up, we still got this fallback in the form of the mouth alcohol detector, the slope detector on the machine. But as it turns out, this is the one area that's been extensively studied in the machine, particularly the Intox 5000 is just not very good at this function, okay? So I put down here the additional areas of cross-examination, Dr. Dabowski. In the written materials, I went through, and the relevant portions are actually they're quoted in there. So if you need the reference to that actual article that he wrote, it's in there. And if you want the quotation, it's actually block quoted in there as well, so you'll have it. And every state expert that comes in, they love to talk about Dr. Dabowski. I mean, they absolutely love it. Whenever they come in there, they're so proud of all their connections with him. And they love that idea. The problem that they'll have in the state of New York is that Dabowski actually has two separate required safeguards to make sure that mouth alcohol is not there. He requires the 15-minute observation deprivation period, and then second, he requires two sequential tests. So anytime that a state expert comes in, why don't you just follow Dr. Dabowski's recommendations? Wouldn't you like to know that you actually complied with what he thought was a necessary safeguard for the administration of a breath test to make sure that mouth alcohol is not there? I mean, it would be a very powerful cross-examination chapter if you ever had a state expert that came in on that defense. This is just the the data from a study that was produced by Wigmore, and this referenced in your materials as well. And I went through and I talked about the numbers, and I tried to, as well as my little simple mind can, break down those numbers and the data from this table. So that's in the materials as well. What this shows, the bolded numbers that are produced there, those are all tests where the slope detector on the machine did not detect mouth alcohol where it should have.